So you're done.
That's it. Out the gap. Yeah, job done.
When do you know you're done?
Good question. And even at this point, I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think I was ever going to be 100% sure. But
What percentage sure are you?
probably around the 95% mark, and that's good enough for me. Yeah.
So was it a slow climb into 90%, or did you hit that mark somewhere?
It was. No, it was. It was quite a slow burner, really. And like after the back of last year, we had such a good year with the mixed relay, and I was churning out times that I never really had in my career in split times and relays. And that left me in a little bit of a dilemma because I kind of always thought, Paris will probably be my last Olympics, probably be my last competition. And then after last year, I came out fresh thinking, okay, there's definitely more in me. I could definitely do this for another year. But I wanted to sit with the decision to make sure I didn't make any rash decisions. I wanted to go into, the depths of winter again and think, do I want this? Do I want to keep doing the same training? Do I want to get back into the pain of rehab if I get injured and the pain of physical therapy and massage every couple of weeks or every week or so? And as I went into it, I thought, no, I'm happy with my lot. This is the right point for me to walk away and not to try and bite off more than I can chew.
So I'm sure that urge to compete and have big days is still there.
Yeah.
That's not what you have to weigh up.
No, exactly. If I could do that every week, if I could race every week and be in good shape and be injury free, it was a no-brainer. I'd keep going.
And I stomach the drudgery of a nothing Tuesday in November.
Exactly. Even I was just chatting to Will before we came in here and looking outside, it's milling down rain, it's freezing cold, and I'm like, no, I don't want to be out there with cold feet in spikes running around a track in the dark. It's just I've done it for so long now. And
was that ever something you enjoyed? Was that always a bit of like, I'm enduring this?
There's a certain amount of me used to actually enjoy that. Yeah, almost, I don't know, is it a sadistic thing or what? But when it was like, I wasn't a fan of the cold, but the rain, if it rained, no problem. I'd get out there and I'd be in a rain jacket and it wouldn't affect me. There's a part of me almost enjoyed in UL on the track. The back side of the track isn't lit, and on a Monday or a Thursday night there are big track sessions. I could be running down the back straight. It'd be raining. The track would be flooded and it'd be dark. And there's a part of me almost enjoyed the quietness and the sort of, I don't know, the almost the trudgery of it. Like, I don't know what it was that I almost enjoyed, but I actually went down. Hayley, my coach, had gotten her hip replaced recently there back in maybe November, December. She'd asked me would I come down to the track and just give a hand at training because they're quite a big group. I said, yeah, no problem. So it was just basically to take recovery times and time some of the lads when they were running, just because we could only have one coach on one side, one coach on the other, and she should find it difficult to cross over and back on the track. I said, yeah, no problem. And I remember taking recovery times for the lads, setting them off, giving them ready and go, and then starting their recovery time and giving them ready and go, and just kind of basically keeping the schedule on track for the training session, and thinking to myself, why would I ever do this again? Why did I do this for so long? I was getting all of these real negative thoughts to the point that I was like, I actually can't tell all the lads here what I'm thinking because I was getting to the point I was like, why is anybody doing this? So it was very quick that my mind changed, and I knew that was really a kind of a big turning point for me to say, right, I'm done.
And you trained in Limerick pretty much your whole career.
Yeah. So I first joined Ferrybank Athletics Club as a kid, and then moved to college in UL, and that's where I met Hayley and Drew and trained in UL since 2011 or 2010 even. Like,
would you not have gone somewhere sunny?
It would have been too easy. It would have been way too easy to do that.
Would it have been better?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. If we had good weather all the time in Ireland, we'd have been, it's just so much easier, especially in the 400 hurdles where we can only do the technical work on the track over 400 metres, where if it's raining, it's slippy, it's wet, it's freezing cold, you're at risk of injury. So that's why we'd often spend maybe 2 or 3 weeks in January, 2 or 3 weeks in April on a warm weather training camp. And then
so you would nip away a bit.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sadistic.
Yeah. Yes.
We'll chat about the career. I'm curious where, 12 years, give or take, as a professional athlete, where that leaves you. You've gone through it now. You're thrown into this washing machine and you're spat out now, and you're like, okay, where am I in my life? And emotionally, spiritually, physically, but even financially.
Yeah.
As a 32-year-old, are you behind all your friends now, or with sponsorship and carding? Are you in a good spot actually?
I'm probably in, like, I suppose with profile and what I've experienced and what I've achieved and what I've done, I'm definitely in a better place than I was before I started. Financially, I'm definitely not where I would have liked to have been if I'd gone into full work.
Yeah.
But
So say
it's the trade-up, really.
Yeah, it's the interest. So say you did your degree in mechanical engineering, went in as an engineer.
Yeah.
You'd be on a, you work for 12 years. You've been very good salary now. You'd be.
Oh yeah, I'd be in a very, very good position.
So I don't suspect many Irish athletes emerge with like their pension fund flying and a big pile of savings and.
No, literally. Like, I suppose after 2016, I had obviously I became very attractive for sponsors, and I kind of became a household name, and money did start to roll in.
Okay.
But what I did was I paid myself out of that. I basically gave myself a yearly wage plus my funding, which was enough to allow me to train full time, and then gave me a bit of savings as well, which I put aside. And basically the savings allowed me to, for the latter part of my career, where sort of, if you like, I came up to a peak financially and then started to come down a little bit. Those savings allowed me to basically train full time, even when there was a bit of fluctuation in my profile with sponsors, etc. So if I hadn't done that, the last couple of years would have been a big struggle. Now, I suppose it was difficult to get a mortgage because as a self-employed athlete, they're all the things that are risky when it comes to getting a mortgage. What saved me there was having my degrees. So I did manage to get a modest mortgage, and that's probably the one thing that I did manage to come away with, but out of the other side of it. Okay. But
so you box smart, it sounds like.
Yeah, I would have. There's other things, even when I look back, I would have liked to have done different again. But I've tried to put myself in the best position I could. But it's not the sport to get into if you're doing it for the money.
No, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because I think you got a 1950s cottage in Limerick, didn't you?
Correct.
And renovated it and got it up to speed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So most of your counterparts who were in athletics, when the system, I'm sorry, I'd say they would go in willingly, but you do emerge in your 30s on the back foot a little bit.
Yeah, essentially, like the way I look at it is life is on pause for however long you're a professional athlete.
Yeah.
So you basically come out. So I may as well be coming out now as a 20-something-year-old, early 20s, essentially. And that's where a lot of athletes will emerge, and a lot of athletes will come out kind of thinking, right, where do I go from here? Or a little bit lost. And that's kind of the reality of it. But it's because we're chasing a dream, we're chasing accolades, we're pushing ourselves in a different, while it's not the norm, it might not be what everybody else does, we're pushing ourselves in a different direction, in a different way, and we're happy to do that. I don't have regrets in that sense for actually going all in, because if I didn't go all in, I wouldn't have gotten to where I was. It's just,
well, life's a bit more than money.
Yes, yeah, and that was a big factor in actually stepping away from the sport, is that it's more like the sport is more than money, there's more than accolades and everything else. I feel like I'd gotten what I wanted out of the sport, and I was kind of thinking, okay, now I'd actually like to go into real life and actually spend time with people again. And I kind of realised what I value is I value time with people and experiences and stuff like that. So athletics was also putting that on pause to a certain extent.
So what will you do for a job now?
Great question. Yeah, I'm all ears. Anybody have any jobs for me?
Do you want to be a mechanical engineer?
I love engineering. I love that side of things. What I don't love is the idea of a 9-to-5. That's, for the moment, I'm trying to avoid that as best.
Thomas, I hate to break it to you. Nobody loves the idea of a 9-to-5.
I know.
This is life, unfortunately.
And because I feel like the the reason, I suppose,
Did you see everyone out there like clapping and dancing in the office?
I walked through Dublin there. Everyone's on their lunch break there on their 9-to-5.
So try and avoid it.
Yeah, I suppose that's why I'm kind of trying out a couple of different things at the moment. Anything that's coming my way, I'm testing out the waters. Kind of on a part-time basis with a lot of different things at the moment. I'm happy because I suppose my reason for an aversion to the 9-to-5 is I've lived 12 to 12 for the last 12 to 13 years, whereby you're never off. Which is where I feel like before I go straight into something that's very structured again, I want a bit of chaos. I want a bit of no structure, a little bit of sort of all over the place, not being in one place at a certain time, because that was my life for so long.
Yeah.
So I'm going to avoid that for a while, and if I can avoid it forevermore, I'll be happy enough.
Listen, if you figure out a way.
Yeah.
And what's your best guess as to how you might do that, or what do you've no semblance whatsoever? Because you've done that interesting thing that all sports people do, where you've gone from being 32 years of age in athletics, old man Barr,
Yeah.
to now suddenly you're no longer the self-image. Even God, I'm getting old. I'm the oldest in the track. I'm old.
Yeah.
To now, boom. You're a very young 32-year-old with hopefully 50 plus years of living to do.
Yep, exactly. And that's the way I'm looking at it. It's great.
It's a reframe. I'm young again.
Completely. Yeah, completely. And it's funny, depending on who I talk to, people are like, oh, you're getting a bit old now. And then I'll come into the real world, away from athletics, and it's like, Jesus, you have your whole life ahead of you, another 60 years before you even think of retirement, or another 30 years before you even think of retirement. And I'm like, yeah, this is where I need to be, because it was getting a little bit draining, hearing, oh, will you keep going? And it was the chat around my career going forward was definitely becoming very strained or negative. And I didn't really like that as much. So now I'm kind of like out of that. I'm like, oh, it's like a whole refresh. It's a whole new setup. But look, I don't know where I'll end up with work. Like, I have a lot of one thing as well is, even when I was training, I never gave up a lot of my pastimes or passions. I just had to cut way down on them. I'm big into DIY. I'm big into working with my hands. Like, to be honest, as part of me would nearly rather be in some kind of a labour intensive job rather than in an office setting, which is where I'm still kind of trying to sort of find my feet. Like, I have a lot of avenues that I would like to go down. If I could be working for myself to a certain extent, self-employed, I would definitely enjoy that, because I like the challenge. I like that little bit of pressure or stress. I would have had, obviously with athletics, I was self-directed for my entire career. But I don't know. At the moment, to keep the wolves from the door, I'm working part-time with a friend of mine who set up a company there back 12 years ago, doing TY workshops on team building, project management and all of that. So I'm doing those part-time. Another friend of mine has set up a company called Sports Equipment Ireland, which is supplying sports equipment. So I'm kind of, I have those two avenues. There's another avenue then that I'm kind of looking at as well, whereby my girlfriend's father has they're very big mechanical services company, and he's based up in Donegal, looking to maybe set something up down south as well. And he's been chatting to me, so I actually need to respond to his messages on that, because we need to get the ball rolling. That, so I have a lot of different avenues that I could pursue. But to be honest, as a part of me, I just want to try everything now. You know?
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Do you retire happy with your career?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah, I don't like. I said it in interviews after Rio that if that was the pinnacle of my career and I walked away the following day after finishing fourth in the Olympics with a 47-second beside my name, I was happy to walk away at that, and I still hold that sentiment. Now, there's been some more accolades, some more reasons to celebrate since then, but it's a place I never saw the sport taking me.
So is that still, and we'll touch on the European medal and the mixed relay and various other achievements. Rio as a 24-year-old finishing fourth in the world. That is still the moment. That's the thing. That's
for sure,
the first line of your obituary in many decades. That's the thing for you.
Yeah, it is. And like, it's a place, first of all, I never saw myself. I never thought I could reach that level. It's not somewhere I was aiming from a young kid.
Because you weren't, I mentioned in the intro, you weren't winning national championships necessarily as a teenager. I mean,
no.
To go from kind of 1920, things getting serious, to fourth in the world.
Yeah.
Big jump.
Yeah, huge jump. Which is why I suppose, it was great. Ignorance was bliss in a lot of ways as to how I got there as well. But I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed training. I enjoyed kind of working my way up the ranks. And then when I got to that point, it was like, right, we need to try and hold this and push on a little bit more. And I was always kind of searching for that form again. And we came close a lot of times, but it was, it's definitely, it's the pinnacle for sure. It's the best merit. And not just because, like, fourth place in Olympics on its own, 47.97 is, even thinking of it now, it is phenomenal. But it's the year that I had to get there. It was probably my toughest year with injury, emotionally and psychologically. It was a very tough year. And that's as well why I really like, or I'm really proud of that year, I suppose, is because I was very close to throwing in the towel. I was very close to just saying, what's all this worth? but kind of persevered, stuck through, surrounded myself with very good people, and then came out the right end of it. So it's the backstory as well, which makes me very happy. Often, if something comes easy, it's not worth having, whereas that result was really worth having.
It's an extraordinary achievement, like fourth in the world. I think it's a classic example of athletes being underappreciated by the sporting public.
I don't know. I felt very, very appreciated.
Good, okay.
Around that whole time, and what do you call it, circus even.
Yeah, I'm sure it was 0.5 of a second.
0.05.
Sorry.
Yeah, even smaller again.
Of course it would be 0.05 of a second.
Yeah.
I just paused there for more than 0.05 to let it sink in. That's the difference between fourth and a medal.
Yeah, for sure.
Does that ever keep you up at night?
No, never. The difference is you don't come away with something to show off.
Yeah.
You don't stand on the podium in fourth, but I was so close and at such an outside chance to a certain extent as well that for me it's as good as a medal. It's better than fifth, it's better than sixth, It's never really given me any negative kind of connotations.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I had seen a line from you a couple of years ago where you had made the point that, again, in the context of being very, very happy, obviously, with fourth in the world, that you'd been a touch slow getting to your first hurdle, slower than you might usually be. And maybe that might have bridged the 0.05. So I wasn't sure if that was eating away at you or not.
No, because my finishing 40 metres was faster than it ever has been.
Right.
So, I suppose I could be guilty of... Now, don't get me wrong. We did in the following years go searching for that missing time in the first half and the first 45, 50 metres. And we ended up changing my stride pattern, changing up my block start, changed up a lot in that first little bit, which did pay dividends as the years went on. But my final 40 metres, and that's why it's great to look at it all in separate parts for learning what we can do better, but also it's one full performance. It was very close to a perfect race, which is very rare to be able to say in the context of what we're doing, because you can break it down so much, especially in the hurdles. You can break it down into 12 different segments or 11 different segments.
Of course.
Different segments, yeah. But no, I could find areas where we could have improved, but to put it all together the way I did on the day that I did when it counted was the most important thing.
Yeah. And so 47.97, how often do you hit that kind of level over the subsequent 10 years?
I was probably in that shape again maybe 3 or 4 times. And really? It would have been... Yeah, because... And I say 3 or 4 times, it's 3 or 4 years really, 3 or 4 seasons I would have been in that shape, because we'll always build and build and build to a peak. And it's the peak is where I'm saying one of those times. One was probably in London in 2017, where I picked up a stomach bug between the heats and the semi-final, the heats and the semi-final, and actually had to withdraw altogether. One would have been in Tokyo. And one was Budapest in 2023. Tokyo, I hit hurdle 7. I was on for a much faster time in the semi-final there than a 47.97 going by my split times. But I was actually coming into hurdle 7 much faster than I was accustomed to or used to, and actually didn't really know how to handle it. And then in Budapest, I was in extremely good shape going into that championships. And the week before I flew out, I pulled my calf. So it's just, but that's the thing. That's why getting it right in Rio was so important, because there's so many things so many factors can go wrong in the event that we're in. But yeah, it was there were touches of it since.
Yeah.
It
so much has to come together.
Yeah.
You could drive yourself insane, all the uncontrollables.
Yeah. It's like the Roadrunner and the Coyote. I was the Roadrunner, or the time was the Roadrunner, I was the Coyote trying to chase it.
You touch on something there which is so central to your sport, obviously, is that it's a marriage of speed and technique.
Yep.
So the speed part is the speed part, but then the technique, as you've alluded to, each hurdle, what's the distance between the hurdles? Is it 30 odd meters?
35, yeah.
35, yeah. So you're breaking that down into minutiae.
Yep.
I remember we spoke before and you were saying, well, I was kind of 15 strides per section, and then we kind of got it down to 14, and then there was some talk of 13, and these are the things.
Fair play, you have a better memory than I have anyway.
Going on, yeah. But so that in itself, changing the length of your stride is obviously takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
But then obviously you wake up on certain days and you've got lots of adrenaline, or it's cold, or it's warm, or you're in, the guy next to you in the lane you're in a full on race with him, and that's distracting. So as you go around this 400 meter torture chamber, you're also having to monitor, I've taken an extra stride there. I need to make the next stride slightly smaller so that I don't go from 13 strides to 12 or 13 to 15 and clip the hurdle.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on there.
For that 49, 50, whatever, 48 seconds that you're constantly thinking. You're always monitoring. And the biggest thing, I suppose, is to try not to get ahead of yourself, it's to try and do what you need to do. And that's the hardest part, is just that you don't get distracted by what's going on around you, away from your job. Like, in essence, it's very simple. You have 10 hurdles, your own lane. No one should affect you. Do you know, technically no one should, but often that's very hard to look past. But I love the technical side of the sport and the technical side of the events. I actually way prefer the 400 meter hurdles, even though it is a lot more difficult and there's a lot more to go wrong than the 400 meter flat. I much prefer it, because when you get it right, there's so much going on that it feels amazing.
Yes. When you're in a flow.
Yeah.
Like, I'm an artist here.
Yeah. Literally, and you just feel like you're floating. Your body is up here and your legs are just ticking over underneath you. And there's always a certain point in the season, maybe 3, might be the second race, it might be my 5th race. So I'll often do a lot of races, or I would have, after speaking the past tense now, I would have often done a lot of races, probably more than a lot of my counterparts or a lot of other Irish athletes. I would always get a lot of race practice in early in the season to try and get that race practice, get a feel, because once I do enough of them, I come off the track, then I'm not even tired. I'm finding that flow, finding that rhythm, and then it means that coming into the championships, it's I'm in the right sort of frame of mind and stuff. But it's amazing when you get it right.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
And equally, then, are there days where your stride pattern's off, or something's out of sync, and you're trying to recalibrate the next length of stride so that it's that you're dead then, I presume.
Yeah,
or can you pull it out of the fire?
You can pull it out. Yeah, in fairness, it's every race. Unless you have the perfect calm conditions where there's no wind, you're feeling good on the day. You don't have any jet lag. You don't have any tiredness from travel. You're ready to go. You know, you're well hydrated. You know, a lot of things come together for that kind of perfect feeling of a race. And I've realised that most races are not going to feel like that. Most races will have a bit of wind, will have a day where you're feeling better and you're getting too close to the hurdles, or you're having to reach for the hurdles. But that's where I suppose I'd always have been thinking one hurdle ahead. So if I'm reaching coming into hurdle 4, right now I'm thinking, okay, either I need to come off this hurdle and lengthen my strides a little bit so that I'm not reaching for the next one, or I shorten it and put in an extra stride and hit it a little bit more bang on.
And that would mean you're jumping off the opposite leg, would it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'd swap legs then.
Which you prefer not to do?
Prefer not to. My left leg is my dominant leg. Normally I would take maybe 2 hurdles on my right leg, but I'd much rather take it on the left leg. But if in the race the best option there is to take it on my right leg, I will. Yeah. You know, so it's all of that's kind of going on in the background, or you're kind of thinking, you know, you do sometimes get into little races with somebody in the lane outside you, and you're thinking, and I'm focusing on my lane, but I can see in the corner of my eye, he's jumping ahead of me, so that means he's ahead of where I am in the race, and I should be ahead of him. And then you're kind of thinking, right, I need to pick this up a little bit here, and then you can pull it up again, and then you can settle again, and it's just all of that is going on, and it's really minute changes. If you're making big changes in a race, that's where it's going to go belly up.
And so it sounds like you got to a point where this constant calibration in a race was something you could do very calmly.
Yes. Yeah. And if I couldn't do it calmly, I was goosed.
You're dead.
Yeah.
And I can see how, you know, say it's the biggest race of your life, and that first 35 meters, you're like, oh no, I'm off. You know, a swimmer jumping into a pool, goggles and the water in the goggles. It's like,
it's very distracting.
This is not going to be good. This is not the way I want it to be. We're just going to have to get through it.
Yeah.
And you don't have time for why has this happened on this race today of all days?
Yeah. No, it's funny. That was, even if it did go wrong in the very first segment of the race, my thought was never, I can't believe this has happened. My thought was always, how do we recoup this? How do we recover?
Pity party later.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. The excuses will come in the interview afterwards.
Yeah. And so was your strength to get to this level? Was it more your speed or your technique? I'm sure both have to be good. It's technique.
Yeah.
So
that's why I never made it in the 400 flat.
I guess that was the next question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So people would have looked at you and said, he's a technique merchant.
Yeah. Even like my running style is very much governed and based on my running speed is very much governed and based on my running technique. I wouldn't have gotten to where I was without that.
And would there be people who run 400 metres hurdles who could compete in 400 flat?
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you look at, any of the top guys, Karsten Warholm, Roy Benjamin, Dos Santos, a lot of the top guys. There's even guys that, are maybe a little bit further down, not even up at the very top, but they might even actually be nearly better 400 metre runners than they would be 400 metre hurdlers.
So why do they do hurdles?
I suppose there isn't because it's a technical event, there maybe isn't as much depth in it.
Okay.
It's much easier to get into 400s than it is 400 metre hurdles. And actually that's what happened after Rio. The times 47.97 put me fourth in the world. That would barely get me into a final these days.
Is that
because
right?
Because of the way the sport has moved on. Guys that I raced against running 47.97, I was ahead of them way back then. They're now running faster than me, or they would have been running faster than me in the last couple of years because the event has moved on, and it was very much a technical based event and a speed endurance based event. But Warholm changed the event whereby he came in as a speed merchant. His technique was all over the place at the start.
Yeah.
And he wasn't a great hurdler, but he tidied it up and he had the raw speed. So when he put the speed and the technique together, that's where we have a lot of athletes now so a lot of 400 metre runners are moving over, or even 200 metre runners are moving over to the hurdles.
Okay.
And that's why we've seen a big drop in the times recently.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, that day was always going to come.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. We've got found out.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So now it's a marriage of the best.
Completely. Yeah.
Should mention the European medal in 18 because that's again a big deal.
Yeah.
I take your point that you were appreciated when you came fourth in the world. I suppose I just mean it from the point of view of we'll do rugby 2 times a week in here, and it's like, can Leinster win a European medal? And it's like this Everest.
Yeah.
Can Manchester United, can they win the European medal in 99 or a team win it? European Cup, and it's like, oh yeah, he won a European. Yeah, he won a European.
It's funny.
It's a huge thing. So you finished third.
Yep.
You really won this bronze medal because I watched it back in this morning. Gold and silver are a little bit ahead.
They're in their own race.
Yeah, you're in lane 8, and in lane 7 is Ludi Valion, French runner.
Yeah.
And it's a full on around the last bend. It's going to be one of you two is going to win a bronze.
Yeah.
And you in the last 15, 20 meters
took it. Yeah.
And then you jump up in the air when you cross the finish line.
Yeah.
Like a skip and the 2 lads who finished first and second are like, high five. And you're like...
Yeah, that was my goal.
But that, pretty magic way to win it. Like, it wasn't like will he get a second? Oh, he's fallen back to third. It was a
battle for that bronze.
One of you two is going to get a bronze medal here.
Yeah.
And so you come out the right side of that one.
Yeah, it's funny. Because I was running in lane 8... Because of the stagger, I was staggered ahead of everyone in the race. So I was completely blind for the first 300 metres, 250, 300 metres.
Good thing or bad thing?
On that day, a good thing.
Okay. Traditionally, people wouldn't love it?
No, because if you don't get your first 200 right, you are out the gap and you have people coming up on your shoulder and you're out. Because it's but I suppose in a lot of ways I'm lucky. I'm relatively good at judging pace. And also I thrive off of rounds. I love rounds back to back to back because through the semi-final, I knew, okay, I'm in good shape. That felt easy, a 48 high or a 49 low, that felt easy. I can really go for it tomorrow. If I was in a position where I was a little bit tired the day before, or I was like, oh, I don't know, I probably wouldn't have been as ballsy in the first 200 metres to actually go for it, whereas I was ready to go for it.
I feel good. Let's go.
Yeah.
Great place to be in a final.
And it meant that I was in my own race. It meant that I had to knuckle down and I had to double down on my own stride pattern and my own rhythm. And then I had sat down on the edge of my bed, as I always will the night before, going through the race in my head as to how it might play out, to try and remove as much unknowns as I could. And I had gone through every possible iteration whereby I'm getting passed out at 200 metres, whereby they're all coming up on me. And what do I do there? Do I panic? No. Do I try and stay to my own pattern? also, okay, I'm expecting, where I would have expected people to start coming up my shoulder is at 250 metres, hurdle 7, right where you're on the crown of the second bend. And I'd prepared for that, thinking, okay, let's see where I'm at. Am I in second place? Am I in third place? Am I in fourth? Am I in fifth? Am I in last position at this point? So I'd prepared for that.
Okay.
And then I was kind of thinking, hold on a second. What if I get to that point and I still don't see anyone? What if I get to hurdle 8 when I'm coming onto the straight and the stagger's unwinding and I'm ahead? What am I going to do then? And I was like, okay, that's panic stations then, because I haven't prepared. So I prepared for that. I prepared to literally be coming down the home straight in first place, second place, third place. So when I got into the battle with Ludwig down the home straight, I know I have a strong finish, and I knew that when he was on my shoulder at that point, at hurdle 8 coming onto the straight and we were neck and neck, I was like, there's no way this man has me.
Really?
Yeah, at hurdle 8 I knew that bronze medal was mine.
Funny.
Yeah.
Because you watch it back, obviously, and people can just stick in European 400 metre hurdle final 2018. I would assume, looking in, God, he's in all sorts of panic here. He knows he's in a fight.
I was as calm as I've probably ever been. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to tell me I was straining every sinew. I was all out.
No, I literally was like, right, this is just rinse and repeat. Just do what I normally do on the home straight, nail. And like that refocused me a lot. It refocuses me when I have something like that. I'm like, if I hit this hurdle right, we're on. If I don't do it, I lose the chance. So I nailed hurdle 8, nailed hurdle 9, nailed hurdle 10, and then drove for home and got the bronze. So I kind of...
It's a great way to do it.
Yeah. It wasn't by accident.
Yeah. So that was 4 years on from Rio, and you have a championship medal in your pocket. So that's big.
Yeah.
I know fourth is still amazing, but it's good to have some silverware.
Absolutely. It is nice to have something to show.
Yeah. When you're going to school.
Physically. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This mixed relay business of the last couple of years.
It's been phenomenal.
This is like your Indian summer, isn't it?
Yeah, literally. It literally is. It's like it's something we've been working on for a long time. We saw the mixed relay as a new event.
Yeah.
We saw it as a big opportunity because Ireland often, now in fairness, this year is very different. We often find it hard to field a strong quartet of males or females completely as a small country. Mixed relay is very much set up for small countries.
Right.
To field a relay team and to be competitive. So back in 2019, 2020, we earmarked this. We thought, right, if we can get our foot in the door, once you qualify for a championships once, you're in the best race you can possibly be in. There's not really any other opportunities to lay down a marker or a time for a team. That's how you qualify for the next year's championships and the next. So once you're in the system, it's very easy to stay in the system. But if you fall out of it, it's very hard to get back in. So 2021, we qualified for the relay, for the Olympics, for the mixed 4x4 the first time in Tokyo. And ever since then, it's been growing and growing and growing. And it's what it does as well, when a relay team qualifies, you get all the 200 metre runners coming up to fours. You get all the 400 metre runners putting their oar in. You get all the 400 metre hurdlers and some 800 metre runners running the 400s as well. So it brings the level up. Because you have more depth, it brings everybody's level up. And we've seen a huge rise in the women's 400 as well. Now, I'm not going to say it's solely because of that, but it's definitely been a big factor in it as well, yeah.
Yeah. So it was Rome last year. That was the first European mixed relay, the inaugural, yeah.
Correct, yeah.
So it was you, Rashida, Charlene Wadsley, Chris O'Donnell.
Yeah.
And you ran a 44.90.
Yeah.
That's fast.
It's faster than I ever have, yeah.
How do you explain that?
Good question. I knew I was in good shape. What I was running over the hurdles this year wasn't indicative of where I was fitness-wise. I was definitely in mid to low 48 shape most of the season, but the rhythm wasn't coming in the hurdles. It wasn't there. What we saw in the mixed 4x4 in the final in Rome was more indicative of where I was at fitness-wise. It just wasn't translating over the hurdles. But I think as well, getting into the race that I did with the Belgian Alexander Doom was the best thing for me. I was leading, so Rashida handed me over the baton in first place. That was almost
shocker.
Now I was ready for it, but also it's not a very comfortable place to be because you're the heir to every other greyhound behind you.
Everyone at home was like, well, don't mess this up, Barr. She's
literally, yeah, that's all I was thinking. And in the first 40 metres, someone came up on my shoulder. I was like, oh no, I've messed it up already. And it was Alexander Doom, reigning world indoor champion. And I thought, brilliant.
Great to see you.
This is the best thing he's going to pace me around now to a fast time. I'll just sit on him.
So you did think brilliant?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to sit with him.
Genuinely, yeah. All I thought was, I know he's fast. I know all I have to do is stay anywhere near him and there won't be many catching him. So if I could stay in touching distance with him, and in the last 100 try and kick and actually get back up on his shoulder, or even better, overtake him, which was wishful thinking, but that was my thinking at the time. So I didn't let the gap get too big, and then handed off over to Charlene in a good position then. So he kind of paced me to a fast time.
It's interesting. It's really amazing your sport that, like, well, they just run. And then you get into the particulars and the tactics and the thinking that goes on. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Because I watched back again the medal presentation in Rome and the anthems. And sometimes anthems are like heavy, emotional tears. And I think there were some tears, but this was more of a party.
Completely.
It was, it was on a stage, and there was like a big crowd there, lots of tricolours, and Aaron Levine starts. And you're all singing, but also just people are just laughing.
Yeah,
it was a light kind of a party type of.
Because we were looking down as well, and friends and family, and people are pointing up at us and making funny faces, or like, you know, whatever. And so it was just hard not to get wrapped up in that as well. While it is a very proud and serious moment as well.
Yes, serious. But this felt, let's enjoy it though.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I've been at enough championships where you go home with nothing and you are crying for the wrong reasons. So we kind of had that in us, that we just wanted to enjoy it, because those medals don't come around that often, you know.
Yeah. So that's a very interesting analysis, because I was going to say to you, so you run so well for the mixed relay and you win a European gold with them, and yet you go to the Olympics for your third Olympics via the team, not as an individual. And you say you were in good nick all year, it just wasn't happening. Yeah.
Like there was a race I did in Poland. I ran 48.79, and the qualification for the hurdles was 48.70. So I was 0.09 off qualifying. And that race in Poland was the one where I felt, now I'm starting to get into the right shape. Went out in my next race, and my calves and Achilles had just been giving me trouble all year, whereby if I overloaded them, I had to give them 48 hours, 72 hours to calm down before I could start running again. And that was kind of what happened. They flared up a little bit. But I suppose in a way, I was very disappointed not to have made the 400 meter hurdles. It's the first championships since 2011 that I haven't qualified for. Now, I pulled out of Budapest because of my calf tear, and in 2017 I pulled out because of the norovirus bug, but I still qualified for them. Paris was the first one that I hadn't qualified for, and in a way that was kind of in the back of my mind when I was thinking about retirement as well. I was like, it was a bit of a kick to the pride. I was like, the sport is moving on. Do I keep trying to hang on, or do I say, right, I'm at a good place now, walk away, rather than kind of, you know, going off the edge of a cliff?
You would have just found that too tough?
Yeah, it would have been, because I suppose for years I was at the top of the food chain in a way in 400 meter hurdles, or not the top, but I was close to the top. You know, I was only maybe one or two. I wasn't up the very top with all the sweet sugary snacks. I was maybe down with the carbohydrates on the food chain, if you want.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would have been difficult to try and, I suppose, to get to grips with, maybe. And also it means that I could be putting in all this effort and not getting the reward that I love at the end of the summer, which is the races. But this year, actually, the fact that I didn't have the hurdles to worry about, I could put all of my effort into the 400 meter flat. I still had a little bit of work to do to get right for the 400 meter hurdles. And not having to do that in the last couple of weeks leading up to Paris was a huge weight off my shoulders. It reduced my workload by about 60%.
You're not sweating all that technique.
Exactly. It's just get out and run. All I had to do was speed endurance work, which speed endurance was already pretty good. So a lot of it was just all about the speed work. Yeah. So it was nice. It was actually a very free sort of a time, and it was a nice way to finish off, because I didn't have all that added pressure of the relay or the hurdles.
Psychologically, through all of this, not just last year, but just your career generally, you seem like a kind of natural optimist.
For sure.
Yeah. Which is obviously very helpful. I know you did your Achilles 1 year, so that was no party. But in the main, you know, often when athletes are in here, they talk of a fairly tortured existence. Pressure. In the main, you don't win 99% of the races you're in.
Oh yeah, you leave disappointed most of the time.
Yeah. There's a drudgery in part to the training. So you can kind of listen to an athlete talk and it's like, God, that just sounds fairly miserable. Mental health can suffer. You don't sound like you've had to endure big prolonged periods.
Look, I have 100%. I have had a lot of disappointments, a lot of down days, a lot of frustrating times. Certain amounts of it were prolonged, but not for any more than a couple of months. For the most part, I've enjoyed the process of training. I've enjoyed actually going down, training with the lads, and all the rest of the training group, all of the group that are there, and it's changed over the years. And going down and seeing my coaches and been in the gym as well, and like I met Kelly through the sport. There's so many benefits to the sport as well outside of just the actual slog of training and the not so. And I suppose as well I have a little bit of a short memory. So when when I've been injured, I'm stuck in it for a while, or if there's bad times. Once I get past that, I kind of forget about it. I'm like, oh no, we're back on track here, and I just move on to the next thing. Or like, even when I have a bad race, or I have a not so fun, or I have a bit of a disappointment, or I have an injury, I'll always try and take some kind of a learning from it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, right, I don't want to leave myself in this position.
It's really good though, because I think I dare say a majority of athletes, if we were having a retirement chat, would often say, "Yeah, I wish I'd enjoyed it more."
There was no fear in me on that one. Yeah, I always, even championships, like I loved going to championships. I loved just, traveling to a different country with the team. It was because at that point as well, that's what I love. I love racing. But at that point, all the hard work is done. Whereas a lot of athletes you'll see, and I don't, not that I don't understand it, I can understand it because there's a lot of pressure goes with it.
Yeah.
But because I was not that way inclined, I was like, lads, this is what we do all the work for. Why is it you'll happily go into training, do all the slog, and we get to enjoyment. You've qualified for the Olympics, you've qualified for Europeans, whatever it is. And now is the time that you're going to go backwards and start thinking
tight.
Yeah.
Heaviness.
I'm like, no, this is after I've done my last training session before I go out to the championships, a weight is lifted off. I'm like, I can do no more. Let's go and see what happens.
Showtime mode.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe that explains why you did big things on big days,
Maybe, I don't know.
Have you so your sister Jessie obviously was an Olympian in 12.
Yes, yeah.
What's in the Barr genetics? Have you checked your VO2 max, or do you run more efficiently than the rest of us, or what's that is a mad thing.
It is mad.
Two Olympians in one house.
I don't know. I think like we both would have had naturally, and actually I was only chatting to Jessie before this, and I haven't been chatting to her properly since I announced my retirement, and obviously she was a big inspiration through my career. A lot of it as well, I suppose, is that she showed me what was possible. It made it very accessible. She's my sister. I'm like, Jessie is an Olympian. But at the same time, I was like,
if she can do it.
She can do it, yeah, exactly. Anything you can do, I can do better kind of thing. And she was like, look, I really appreciate it. But she's like, you can stop mentioning me now. Like, it's because she'd be very modest like that as well.
Oh, as in, stop with the I'm your inspiration.
Yeah. But credit where it's due, But I don't know. We were both very kind of technically proficient runners. Neither of us were very speedy, very fast, but we had good engines in that we both had relatively good speed, endurance, and good technique, and we were quite efficient runners. We're both very kind of tall, gangly sort of plyometric runners. We rely on our Achilles tendons to, we spring along the track rather than power down the track.
Right.
And that's why both of us, I suppose, were plagued with Achilles and calves injuries towards the latter ends of our careers.
Okay, so you're springy.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, because I'm a heavy-footed.
Oh yeah,
on the treadmill.
Your power, so you're
on the treadmill. It's embarrassing. I nearly need to apologise to people beside me. It's not good. But I'd be fast then, so I don't know if
that's power then.
Yeah,
so you're a power athlete. There's two different ways you could be. To be fast, you can be either or a mix of both. But like, you can be very powerful and like that, quite heavy, quite strong. You know you're contacting with the track, or you can be quite light and springy and sort of like you move almost like fluidly.
Yes.
But if you lose that, then you're kind of
goosed.
You're kind of goosed.
Yeah, that's interesting because you do look springy.
Yeah,
you just do. Everything about you looks.
I
can't.
I was a high jumper for a while, I suppose.
Yeah, I can see that. I can't imagine like your knees taking a pounding from each run the way some people's would.
Yeah, no, rarely. I've never had any real knee or ankle issues or anything like that. Yeah.
Will you now exercise routinely for the rest of your life?
Nah, I wouldn't say so. I've I've done it. It's like, I suppose, I've done it for so long now. I'm like, that's the work is done. I've built up enough of a buffer for a couple of years anyway.
Serious?
Yeah, I've barely run a step, I'd say, since I did a little bit, all right, just to keep taking over. But
you're not missing the endorphins.
I'm getting that from other ways now. I do miss the buzz coming away from a real fast track session.
Okay.
It's gonna be very hard to replicate that just going for a run or just going to the gym or whatever.
So there'd be a hint of drudgery about that for you.
Yeah, to a certain.
I guess to be fair, there is for most
Yeah, look, I'll get back to it. I'm sure I will. But at the moment, I'm enjoying not having to exercise.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And what about diet then? Because there's not a pick on you.
Yeah, and I'm also enjoying not having to watch everything. I'm like, okay, like I was never a massive eater anyway.
Yeah.
So for me, nearly. It's like there's been a weight lifted off where I'm like, okay, so this morning I was on the road early. I didn't have breakfast. I just got in the car and came up. And I don't need to feel guilty about that. Do you know, I'm not hungry now, but if I was running, if I didn't do that.
I need to fuel whatever, irresponsible.
It was going to affect training. Yeah.
All right, okay.
Yeah. So.
Handbrake down, let's just.
Yeah.
Chill.
Just coast and see what happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
The scene, it was interesting you mentioned about how the speedsters have taken up hurdles now and so the times are coming down. What about life on the circuit? See, away from the championships, I don't even know what I'm talking about here.
You can pick my brains if you want.
I know there's the Diamond League and so you'll run in different race meets, but it's not like everyone's going to gather. I'm sure you see a lot of the same faces.
Yeah.
Is it a collegiate place or is it like we're all sociopathic individuals?
It's quite businesslike in that you fly in, you see a couple of the same faces, you stay in a hotel, you go to race. It's like going to work. You say hello to a few people. You warm up, you do your race.
But it's not much more than a hello.
Yeah, well, in fairness, it depends who it is. I'll meet a lot of people on the circuit that I'd be good friends with a lot of people on the circuit from other countries, and I will stop and chat properly. Like, I'll always give myself a buffer, knowing that when I go down to the warm-up track, I'm going to meet people and I'm going to want to chat.
Okay.
So I'll give myself that half hour, 45 minutes to allow that, and then get the headphones on and get into warm-up. But there are a lot of athletes that it's purely business. There'll be very little small talk. It'll be, I'll arrive in, I'll get my food in, I'll go to the track, I'll race, and then I'll go home. But it is definitely more friendly, if you like, in those early season meets. The closer you get to championships, the more cutthroat it gets. When you're at championships, people rarely chat with their competitors beforehand. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's definitely much more or much less evident. And then once everything is said and done and everyone is finished, then it's like there's this huge sigh of relief. The pressure is off and everyone is, good mates, and if there's an after party, it's always good fun, So.
Okay, so that stuff does.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because it's a very small community. The athletics community is very small. You don't want to ostracize yourself from it either. Do you know?
Yeah. What has been your sense of, in your own sphere, drug taking? No one's going to come up to you and say, I've got this great stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so no one's going to disclose it. But
yeah,
just
it is a problem.
Your feel for it, or what you hear, or whispers, because it's hard from afar to know exactly what we're looking at for obvious reasons.
A lot of people have asked me this, and they're like, is it as bad as people make out? Is it this? Is it that? I think there is an underbelly there. Of course there is. Like, anti-doping is constantly trying to chase the dopers. So they're always a step behind. So it's always going to be an issue where people are going to want to get ahead or cheat. And I think as well, microdosing, TUE, therapeutic use exemption abuse is probably, I wouldn't say rife, but it's become a little bit more common at the moment.
It's hard to know where, can anyone give a percentage of what number of athletes in any given sport are doping? No, it's impossible.
Yeah.
But that that whole TUE supplements world does seem to be where it's really at in a lot of ways. Because if you go off and take EPO or something, it almost feels like a little bit quaint, or like what I'm sure it's happening, but it's like, well, that's just dumb. Whereas you've got all these great supplements here which
can be done legally.
Like the time in 15 when they were like, well, a lot of people seem to be taking this meldonium heart issue stuff.
Yeah.
They're all young, healthy, but do they all need meldonium?
So there's certain
And they
things
banned
where
it,
you look at
and
it,
then
yeah,
Sharapova was pink, but it just turned out everyone was taking meldonium.
Yeah.
And I could see if you're a totally clean athlete, you'd be like, hang on, what? Everyone's taking meldonium?
Yeah.
That would be the really painful part.
It is, and that part is frustrating, I suppose. And like that's why I never, and like it's not I'm trying to like dodge your question as such. It's just I've never put too much thought into it, because if I go down, I'm like that. If I go down, I'm like a dog with a bone. If I go down a rabbit hole like that, I'll want to know everything on the topic. I'll want to search, everything. I'll want to know who's doing what, who's taking what, who's working with what doctor, who's working with what coach, and see how they all link. And if I was to do that, I'd actually tear myself apart with negativity and with skepticism, to the point that I would have actually talked myself out of the sport. So that's why I've never actually put a huge amount of thought into it. But I think there has been more. Obviously, it's hard to avoid as well at times when stuff does come out whereby athletes have, 20 or 30 active TUEs or whatever. And like, I've had one, I think, through my whole career, one TUE for a corticosteroid injection into my hip at the time to settle inflammation. And you see a lot of athletes, like there's certain athletes that they have so many TUEs, and like I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there are times when you'd see it come out that there's athletes on certain TUEs that you're like, how are they actually a functioning human, never mind a high performance athlete?
They seem very very sickly.
Yeah, very, yeah. So, but it's not as bad, like people will look at athletics, they look at cycling, they look at certain events like that, and they'll say, "Oh, it's filthy." It's not, but there is an underbelly there that is that are looking to gain advantage, and I don't like that part of the sport. I feel like, and I was only in a school recently, and I love the questions that I get asked, because it's when you hear what people want to know, and I always will say, look, whatever you want to know, don't go home here with a burning question, because that's what you want. I can talk here, I can give you half an hour spiel on what I've done and where I've been, but ask the questions you want to know, because that's where you'll get the most value out of me being here. And one of the students came up after and said, "Did you ever think about doping?" And I honestly, it's the first time I've ever gotten that question, especially from a student. And I said categorically, it has never even entered my head. Mainly for the reason that I wouldn't feel like I'd actually achieved anything. Even though you'd still have to do 99% of the work and you just get that little extra percentage, that extra edge, I feel like it wasn't mine. So I wouldn't enjoy it.
And would there be a culture out there in the meets? People, I presume, wouldn't be brazen about it, but would there ever be like chatting away and come here, listen, if you ever, if you just want to, if you're struggling, that doctor, he's a good doctor. You could go and talk to him. Does that?
No, never. Not once in my career has anything like that ever kind of come near me, or even of athletes that I know has that ever been a conversation. Because even there's oftentimes as athletes, around the dinner table at championships, so there'll have been a big bust with somebody or whatever, or a doctor, or there's been something happened, and we'll be chatting about it, and we'll all say the same. It's like, where is this all coming from? How do they get into that loop? Like, how does that, not from a point of like, oh, we want a bit of that, but it's from like, because it's maybe we're naive, and maybe we're green, and we're ignoring it, or we don't see it, or we're not seeing the signs. But it'll often come around to the same, being like, how are they actually getting themselves into this sort of mess? Because it's like, it's so far removed from anything that all of us have experienced.
And would you, and don't know names because legally they'd guess in kind of tricky water.
Yeah.
But would you have seen people over the 10 years and you thought the improvement in you from then to then doesn't stack up? And I asked that, by the way, talking about somebody who, when he finished fourth in 16, other people could have said,
yeah, oh yeah, sure.
What's his pedigree?
Yeah.
So maybe in hurdles, technique can improve, things can improve. But did you see people and you thought, I just know by the shape of him, everything there screams rapid improvement?
There is, yeah, and there's certain signs that you'll see, or you'll hear of somebody working with a certain coach or doctor, and then straight away it's raising flags.
Would the doctors would be well known, would they?
Yeah, and straight away that raises suspicion and red flags, and then sure enough you see performances coming, and you're kind of skeptical, and it's annoying because that athlete could have actually done everything completely legit, but it's just put question marks over them. So yeah, there are athletes, there are times where I have sort of had my skepticism or my own sort of thoughts or ideas of how they've gotten to.
And would you ever feel strongly enough to say to that athlete, "What are you working with that doctor for?" Or no,
it's not my place to say. And
is it not your place to say?
Not really, and without any evidence. I'll never come down hard on someone without evidence.
But if you know that doctor's checkered history and dude in lane 6 who's finishing ahead of you in the race is working with that doctor, I'd feel compelled to be like, hang on a second.
Again, without evidence, I can't. Like, if I knew something and I knew something was fishy, or I had anything that I could actually, it's like going to the guard saying, I think that person is doing something fishy, and they're like, well, what evidence have you? Have you anything to say that have you, like, they're innocent until proven guilty?
He's working with the crime lord.
Yeah, yeah. But it's like, oh, well, it's just they turned out they're cousins.
Yeah.
But you know, it's that's why I wouldn't go to. And as well, I don't want to get myself wrapped up into that either, because I'm still in the sport, and it's
take that point. Yeah.
One of those things as well where you don't bite the hand that feeds you if you start getting into kind of that sort of thing. And I don't want to be thinking about it. I don't want it to be consuming, whereby I'm thinking about going training, doing what I can do in my own lane, not worrying.
No, I take that point.
And I have to just trust that World and WADA and are doing their job, and they are, because if you look on Twitter, or what's X it's called now, you'll see on what's the name of it? The credible AIU Athletes Integrity Unit.
Yeah.
Daily, weekly, there's athletes being pulled up for whereabouts failures, being pulled up for anti-doping violations, etc. So they are doing their work, they are doing their job. It's just, it's sometimes you're kind of thinking, if it could just be done a little.
Yeah.
But you know, I trust in that process. That, but I like, at the end of the day, you can only race what's in front of you. And I'm sure there are people that were probably doing dodgy stuff that I left in my wake as well, which I can be happy with, you know.
Yeah. Because I was talking to John Tracy about 6 months ago, and he talked about walking into a race meet, and one of his friends caught his eye and said, have a look in there to the toilet. And he walked in, and there's a couple of lads like syringes out, full on, like pre the race meet. And he wrote a letter and told people about it, and told the media about it, and just...
It was buried.
I don't know, is it buried or not looked into, or how do you prove it, or I don't know.
Yeah.
But I guess it doesn't sound like you're in that sphere, at least.
No, definitely, Jesus, definitely not, no.
Then it would be your business.
Then, yeah. See, that's what I mean. I don't have... If I had that kind of evidence straight away, yeah, then there's reason to go to the authorities.
And so how, last one on this, how extensive is your supplement taking? Like, what kind of stuff are you going for?
At the moment, nothing.
Become clear that you're letting yourself go.
Yeah. Well, I would have been taking a multivitamin. I was sponsored by Optimum Nutrition for most of my career, and all of their stuff is batch tested.
Yeah. Because that's a Wild West world as well.
Completely, you have to be so careful with all of that. So I would have been taking protein powders, recovery powders, creatine, multivitamin. I would have taken beta-alanine, like a pre-workout. Cod liver oil tablets. What else was I taking? That was kind of it. I wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. Because there was a tennis player, Ross Tucker was on with us, who was taking 55 different supplements.
No, oh my God. If I get drug tested, right? Anytime I get drug tested, you had to write down a list of all the supplements you're taking.
Right.
So if I was simply for that alone, the paperwork that I would have taken every single time I was drug tested to put down 55 supplements, that would have put me off it straight away.
How often were you tested?
At least, generally once a month.
Oh, right.
But
so that's not nothing.
Yeah, it's not nothing. After Rio, there were certain times in my career where it was like every week, every second week.
Well, I'd say after Rio, they were like, who's your man?
Yeah, and that's it. And I remember one of the drug tests, I was on... For a long time, I was on 2 different testing pools. I was on WADA's testing pool and Sport Ireland's testing pool.
Yeah.
And they didn't communicate. Obviously, it was to be double blind, so that they'd never communicate information, so that WADA and Sport Ireland worked independently, and that's the way they wanted to keep it. And it kind of makes sense. But where it didn't make sense was WADA arrived up to my front door at 11 p.m. on, say, a Wednesday night. There's a German lad, and he was telling me the story. He's like, I have arrived into Shannon. I was meant to test you on your hour. So we have to give an hour slot every day of where we'll be. that's normally when you'll get drug tested. And I normally set that between 6 and 7 in the morning because I know I'll be in bed. If I'm away from that, I'll make the change, and then I'll on my app. But I just know that that's where I'll be. So generally, and it's funny, you always hear athletes complaining about the early morning drug test, and it's like we do it to ourselves because we know we'll be there. But so they arrived anyway at 11 p.m. He said, I would just chance, knocking on your door today because in case I missed you tomorrow because I fly back tomorrow evening. And he was saying, I'm looking forward to seeing the sights of Limerick tomorrow if I got to drug test you today. He's a very nice fella. So that was grand. I said, perfect, yeah, no problem. Within 45 minutes, I'd, give him the urine sample, give him the blood sample, and he was on his way with his paperwork and everything. And then 6 o'clock the next morning, I got a knock on my window. They knew I was on a ground floor window, bedroom window, so they didn't knock on the door to wake up my housemates, didn't knock on my window. And I heard the knock and I was like, hardly. So I opened the door. I was like, lads, what's going on? I was drug tested 7 hours ago. And they said, by who? I was like, WADA. And they were like, oh yeah, well. And so I was like, look, come in, we'll chat about it. And they said that it's not. It's completely double blind. There's no information passed between the two. I said,
quite good though, because you could think I got my WADA one out of the way, I got a window here, and then boom.
Yep, it is. That's exactly it. And that's why they do it. And I remember them saying at that time, and it was not long after Rio as well, and they said, look, and it changed my way of thinking. I was like, look, it's not like we're trying to catch you out. Look at it this way. We're validating your performance. I was like, very, very true. So I've been tested probably 20 times after Rio in the year after Rio maybe. Yeah. And every one of those, I was like, that's another one tick. It validates the performance, Well,
the recent tennis player, God, I don't want to say her wrong name now. Halep?
I don't really follow the tennis.
There was a recent tennis player, and what helped her prove that there'd been a contamination of the supplement was she'd been tested so recently the week before. So there was no way, based on having nothing in her system a few days prior, that she could only have a tiny trace amount.
Yeah.
A few days later. Yeah. As opposed to, she took some, she took loads of stuff 5 weeks ago and there was just a trace amount left. Yeah. They could show this probably was a contamination. So I guess it's good for the athlete as well.
Completely, yeah. It protects you. It protects everybody in the sport, yeah.
So, your body, we've touched on finances, emotionally, spiritually. Your body's good too?
Oh, sure, look at me. Yeah. Look at me. I'm in great shape.
There's no hip replacement coming? There's nothing?
Oh, there will be, I'd say, in whatever, 15, 20 years.
Will there, yeah?
Yeah, I'd say so. But it's like my dad had to get both his hips replaced in his late 50s, early 60s. So like it's my even on my mum's side, I think her brother had gotten his hip replaced in his 50s as well. So it's probably hereditary, and I have had hip issues over the years. Okay. So that's probably coming down the road.
Okay. Yeah. Other than that, pretty good. You emerge unscathed.
Yeah, and it's funny. This year I came out of the sport. Like normally after the season finishes, I have a couple of niggles that are lingering on, or I'll have something that I need to be rehabbing or working on. This year I walked away and I was like, everything is pain-free.
Nice.
So I was like, okay, this is a nice way to walk away.
Will you get involved in coaching?
I'm not sure. I thought my coach Hayley had always said it. She was like, I don't know if you have the patience for it. Because I'd be a relatively quick learner. So I'm like, come on, look, this is just what you have to do. But at the same time, I'd never say never because I feel like I have a lot to kind of give back to the sport. I have a lot of experience.
You do. And isn't that, because we're all, people are very invested in athletics when it's going well. And the last couple of years have been especially eye-catching for obvious reasons. And so some of the talk I hear is, well, like we need to get the coaching that needs to come up to speed if that's where Ireland's really going to flourish.
Yeah, it is. And
there's three-time Olympian like sitting on the couch eating his fast food doing nothing. So
happy out. Yeah. But I suppose you see there's a big difference, and it's funny, and I suppose this is maybe a misconception, but because I was a good athlete doesn't really mean I'm going to be a good coach, because essentially I've been doing what my coaches have told me for years.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that I know how to structure a training program just because I've been following it. It's like if you drive a car every day, you're a great driver, but can you fix it? Do you know?
So it works for you, but you mightn't be able to look at someone else and say, this is what you should do.
I might not even be able to replicate the training program that Hayley puts together. That's the point. The hardest part, I think, probably when it comes to, like, I can pick up technical cues.
Yeah.
I could probably try and fix someone's block start. I could fix their hurdling technique. I could tell them what worked for me when it came to running up tall and running relaxed and everything. I can give all those cues. But the hard part is actually structuring a training program from the start of the year to the finish to allow an athlete to peak at the right time.
Okay.
That's where my expertise
sports science
is lacking.
aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah, but okay, we'll get it. Sports scientists can look after that. But like in terms of a hurdler, that's where you could really, I think, get in there and help their technique, especially if you were a good technician.
Yeah, I suppose I could, but that's only one element. Yeah, yeah.
And you're not itching to do it?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Any other business?
Don't think so, unless you can think of anything.
No. We've done it. We've been here for an hour.
Fair enough.
That renovation is done in the cottage, I presume.
It's half done anyway. We're into it. Yeah. So we're finishing the rest of it around us. But yeah, nice to be in there at last.
Well, listen, it's great to talk to you so kind of at peace with the decision.
Yeah, cheers, Joe. Appreciate it.
Happy with your career.
Yeah.
Enjoyed your career.
Yeah.
Physically emerge unscathed.
Yeah.
There's a
lot of positives.
lot to be grateful for.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It's something. It was always a hobby. Even when it was a profession, it was still a hobby. I enjoyed it all the way through. And to have gotten to where I did was just the icing on the cake, and to have the celebrations together. And I always I love a good party. So when we celebrated, when we did well, we made sure to celebrate well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the retirement party now as well.
Yeah, well, that's a great way to have been. Still only 32 years old, a young man.
Yeah, a young man in the real world, not in athletics.
Thomas Barr, congrats very sincerely on really an amazing career, and best of luck over the many decades ahead. Thanks
very much, Joe. Appreciate it.